While the Pixel 6 series was groundbreaking for Google, it really isn't the first phone I'd recommend for most people looking to get a Pixel. That title goes to the Pixel 5a, which ironically is substantially cheaper, but still offers a lot of the same features as most flagship phones do. The Pixel A series is very interesting in that it offers a pretty derivative design with a lot of cut features relative to most flagship phones, but at so much cheaper price points that it might make the most sense if you're just looking for a great overall phone. And I would argue that even if you're in the market for a flagship, the Pixel 5a still might be a good solution. Let's talk about it. This is NOISO, and this is the Pixel 5a review. Now before we get started, my Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro review was released a couple months ago, and I think you should watch it if you haven't already. But one thing that I specifically left out of it was my history with Nexus and Pixel phones from Google. You see, I had actually made this long portion of the video where I talked about my experience, my history, and what I loved and didn't love about Pixels and Nexuses in the past. But at the same time I was working on that, ironically, MKBHD released his video about the history of Pixels, and I thought that gave a relatively good history. In my eyes, there's still some unique opinions that I might bring to the table, and I'll talk about them a little bit here. Starting with the design of the Pixel 5a series. The Pixel 5a, while it looks like a very basic design, has something very, very unique from most other flagships released nowadays, and that is the fact that it's built out of metal. Now, we switched from metal phones quite a few years ago, and I honestly don't know exactly why. I think a big reason for it was the iPhone switching from a metal design, specifically to give room for wireless charging, or allow for wireless charging. But wireless charging doesn't seem all of that pervasive in that I think if people still had the option, they might still opt for a metal phone. And that's maybe a perfectly good reason why you might go for the Pixel 5a. Now, I loved the Pixel 5 series because it was the first metal phone that also allowed for wireless charging. It's a very, very cool way to do it. And had it released in the era where metal phones were still in trends, then I think the Pixel 5 would have made a lot of sense. But I think it was just a couple years too late. Some of that also stems from its size. The Pixel 5a is a little bit larger than Pixel 5, but it still could be classified as a relatively small kind of one-handable phone, and I actually really appreciate that. The frame of the phone and the texture of the phone results in a very, very comfortable and grippable experience. So if you want a good one-handed phone, this might be one of the last great options. That grip is provided by this very soft touch, almost plastic feeling, I know it's just a coating, but plastic feeling design, which gives off this very, very unique forest green black color. In many lights, it actually just looks like a black phone, but then in something like this, you can actually see the tint of the green showing through. I appreciate it. It's unique, not too standoutish, but still kind of different. I would have loved to see more color options like we've seen in previous Pixel series, kind of splashy, kind of in-your-face color options, but it seems like Google might be reining that in a little bit. Another benefit of this phone is that it has one of the smallest camera bumps on any sort of modern phone, which is very, very impressive. It just barely raises off of the surface of the back cover, which is really nice, meaning that it won't rattle a lot on any sort of surface. And those cameras are still very, very good. Granted, this probably won't give you the same experience that most flagships in 2022 will, but it will still stand up to most pretty good camera phones from last year. I loved using this, and I think it still actually gives you very, very great pictures. There are two cameras, the first one being a pretty standard lens, and the second one being wide angle. And in my experience, the wide angle offers a good differentiation and gives you some good variability or variety in the type of pictures that you can take. But I would have loved to obviously see a telephoto lens here. Now, it's interesting because usually I don't really care too much about a telephoto lens, but ironically enough, the very first week that I started using this phone, I went up to the Twin Peaks in San Francisco, kind of southern San Francisco, and I tried to take some pictures of downtown San Francisco, and I couldn't actually punch in close enough to get a very good picture. Ironically, the only other phone that I had with me was an iPhone 13 mini, which had the same downside. That is one potential downside versus going for a more modern flagship, but outside of that, it is still very, very capable in terms of portrait mode or night mode or any other kind of very, very good shots. Now, you are giving up some of the special camera features that you get with the Pixel 6 series, but I don't think any of them really stand out to me as really something that I'd miss too much. On the front of the phone is a relatively straightforward 1080 by 2400 6.3-inch display, which is pretty quality in most cases. It doesn't really get too bright during very sunny days, but outside of that, I really found that this display would get me most places. Now, in comparison to obviously the flagship Samsung Galaxy S22 series, this display won't look quite as crisp and won't look quite as punchy, but in most daily use, I really didn't notice too much of a difference. That even came to the point where this is a 90 hertz display rather than 120 hertz like a lot of flagships, but maybe by my eyes, I really can't see the difference when I'm swiping through Twitter or any sort of app screens. 6.3 inches is plenty big to watch YouTube on for me, so I can set this up anywhere and watch it. Or if I want to be kind of watching it on the go, I can actually plug in headphones because this is one of the last mainstream phones that has a headphone jack, which is a nice touch for those who are still hanging on to their wired headphones. Now, being a mid-range phone, I could see some concerns with performance, but frankly, I didn't really feel this bogging down too much during my use. It is getting a little bit older, especially the chip is a little bit older now relative to the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 series, but frankly, I really didn't notice a lot of difference between the experience of using this versus my Pixel 6 Pro. Now, granted, the Pixel 6 Pro was still a little bit finicky in terms of software performance, but this one, I had no problems with software on, and one of the big reasons for that was I stayed on Android 11. Now, Android 11 is now very old, and for me, every single time a new Android update comes my way, I immediately update it to it. Save for on this. Since I had the opportunity to stay on Android 11, I hung on to it for dear life, because Android 12 is just not the right experience for me. I don't like the design, I don't like the new color palettes. It just doesn't look great in my eyes. And so instead, every single time this phone actually requested me to update, I would swipe it away. Now it's getting to the point of time where I'm actually several months behind on security updates, so that's a little bit unfortunate. And I probably will just have to kind of suck it up and upgrade. But I wish, actually, Google offered the option to still get security updates without having to upgrade your entire platform, if you're like me and still preferred the older version of Android. One big problem that some people have had with Pixels in the past is battery life, but I can confidently say that this phone has very impressive battery life. According to Google's own metrics, I was getting 1 day and 17 hours on average, which is plenty enough for me. It means that I could go to sleep with my phone on the charger, wake up, pick it off the charger, and then not have to charge it again until the following night, which is perfect. That's more than enough for my experience. One last major differentiator that this has from the Pixel 6 series is in the fingerprint sensor, which is still mounted on the back, which seems to be going the way of the dinosaur. Now, obviously a lot of people had problems with the Pixel 6 series with its under-displayed fingerprint sensor. So it's nice having confidence that this older style fingerprint sensor will always work very, very quickly. It's also nice to be able to swipe down on the notification bar, but that's a small benefit. Now, the Pixel A series is not new to Google. It's not new that their A series has been a very, very compelling phone for the price point. But frankly, I think this makes sense for a lot more people. And I think I'm surprised that not a lot more people have it. I'm sure if you are willing to spend a little bit more, the Pixel 6 series might make more sense to you. But frankly, I don't think this offers all of that more benefits over the Pixel 5a. In many ways, I actually prefer my experience with the Pixel 5a, and it's not really a, landslide victory for the Pixel 6. There are a lot of other phones at the $400 to $500 price point, but I've never really seen anything quite as compelling as the Pixel 5a. In my mind, your biggest alternative or best alternative is going for a 1 or 2 year old flagship refurbished, which is usually my move, but I can understand why a lot of people don't really feel confident with buying a refurbished phone. If that's the case, then the Pixel 5a would make the most sense for most people. Each year we seem to get more and more frustrated at the ever-increasing phone prices, but it seems like the Pixel A series is like one pushback on that. Now, I don't think Google manufactures quite enough phones to really make a massive impact on the industry, but that being said, it seems like we're finally starting to slow down because it seems like several Samsung phones have been now reduced in price. Whereas they started at $1,000, now they're starting closer to about $800. Hopefully that's a trend that we'll see continue, and we'll see even Apple seem to kind of bow to a reasonably priced mid-range phone, which they continue to not make. I assume later this year we'll probably see a Pixel 6a, and if history has anything to say about it, it's probably going to be a very, very compelling phone at the price, and a good alternative for those who don't want to pay $600 for a Pixel 6. $600 is really not that bad of a price point. It's only the fact that this phone is just not perfect in so many ways that I think many people are looking for something different. I would love to see Google continue its legacy with the Pixel A series and continue to make very, very compelling phones for a reasonable price point, but we'll have to see if that happens. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this review of the Pixel 5a. If you did, be sure to let me know down in the comments and ask any questions you have about the Pixel series. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.